"Get out of my family, you pathetic gold digger!" Evelyn Hale's scream tore through the wedding hall before more than 200 guests. Selena Vaughn, the black bride in her pure white gown, stood frozen. Tears smeared her carefully painted face, dripping onto the silk dress that had been made to honor the happiest day of her life. But everything shattered. The music stopped. The laughter died. Only phones lifted high, cold screens capturing the most humiliating moment of a woman's life. The hall was silent. Not a single voice rose to defend her. Every gaze turned toward Selena, eyes filled with judgment, asking the unspoken question, was she truly worthy of the man standing beside her? In that instant, joy turned into nightmare. The wedding, meant to be the sacred place of love, became an arena where her dignity was torn apart in public view. Can you imagine it? If it were you, standing there? If one day your faith and your love were crushed before hundreds of witnesses? Stay until the end, and you will see how Selena turned humiliation into a moment that silenced the world. Selena Vaughn stood inside the Hampton estate, the sunlight spilling across polished marble floors. The house looked like a dream, filled with flowers, crystal glasses, and the quiet hum of wealth. Guests believed it belonged to the Hale family. Only Selena knew the truth. She had bought the property months ago, in her own name, through a company no one could trace back to her. To the crowd, she looked like an ordinary woman from a modest background. Her dark skin glowed against the silk of her gown, her movements calm and graceful. She had told people she worked as a low-level clerk at a real estate office. Few asked questions. Even fewer cared. Behind the quiet smile, though, was a life no one suspected. Selena carried the weight of billions. Her family empire stretched from Texas oil fields to towers of glass across American cities. She had chosen to keep it hidden, to live small, to test if love could exist without money. As she stood waiting for the ceremony, her heart beat faster. She wanted to believe in love, but part of her feared that the moment truth came out, everything would shatter. Grayson Hale was the kind of man people admired at first glance. At 34, tall and confident, he had built a successful tech company from nothing. His brown eyes carried warmth, his smile disarmed strangers, and his ambition made investors listen. Many said he was his own man, independent from his wealthy family name, but today he was not the CEO, not the entrepreneur. He was simply a groom in love. When he looked at Selena, he saw a woman who steadied his restless heart. He believed she came from simple beginnings, and that only made him love her more. To him, her modest life was proof she was real, untouched by greed. He promised himself to protect her from the whispers he had already heard. People in his circle said she was not one of them, that she didn't belong. Grayson refused to listen. Love, he thought, was stronger than gossip, yet deep inside he worried. He knew his mother. Evelyn Hale had a way of controlling rooms, controlling people, even controlling him. He hoped she would soften. But as he watched her sharp gaze fixed on Selena, he felt unease rising, like clouds before a storm. Evelyn Hale adjusted the diamond pins in her silver hair. At 62, she still carried herself with the elegance of high society. Years of country club dinners and charity galas had shaped her into a woman who expected obedience the moment she entered a room. But tonight, behind the polite smile, her heart burned with fury. She had spent months investigating Selena. No degree, no social pedigree, no wealthy family name. A background, in her mind, unworthy of her son. Evelyn had seen it all before. Women who married for money, women who pretended until the mask fell away. She would not allow it to happen to Grayson. Not in her lifetime. So she made a call. Sloane Mercer, tall, blonde, and once her son's perfect match, had agreed to arrive. For $50,000, Sloane would play her part. All Evelyn needed was one scene. One moment to expose Selena as a fraud. She looked at her reflection and whispered, "Tonight, I will save him." The words were bitter, but she believed them. When she stepped into the hallway, her eyes locked on Selena. Evelyn's smile did not reach her eyes. It was the smile of a predator who had already chosen her prey. The late afternoon sun painted the Hampton skies gold. Guests settled into white chairs lined across the garden, glasses of champagne sparkling in the light. A string quartet began to play, soft music flowing with the sea breeze. It looked like the perfect wedding. Selena stood at the edge of the estate, her hand trembling slightly as she held her bouquet. She drew in a deep breath, trying to steady herself. From a distance, she could see Evelyn in the front row, her posture flawless, her eyes unblinking. Grayson leaned closer and whispered, "You look beautiful." His words should have calmed her, but her stomach twisted with unease. She knew what it meant to walk down that aisle. It was not only a promise of love, it was stepping into a family that already doubted her worth. Still, she lifted her chin. The gown flowed behind her like liquid light. Every step echoed with strength she forced herself to find. Guests turned their heads, admiring her beauty. But in the front row, Evelyn's stare was sharper than knives. To her, Selina was not a bride. She was an intruder, and in Evelyn's mind, intruders were meant to be destroyed. The music softened. The minister lifted his hands, asking the couple to share their vows. Grayson turned first. His voice was steady, but his eyes glistened. "Selina, from the moment I met you, I knew you carried light. Not wealth, not titles, just light. Today, before everyone here, I promise I will love you beyond whispers, beyond doubt, beyond every wall the world tries to place between us." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some nodded, touched by his words. Others exchanged glances, measuring every line. Selina's throat tightened. She could barely speak. Her eyes filled as she whispered, "I promise to stand with you, even when storms rise. I promise to choose you, again and again, no matter what the world says." The minister smiled. Applause rippled through the room. For a moment it felt like love had silenced everything else. But in the front row, Evelyn's hands rested tightly on her lap, knuckles white. To her, the vows were nothing more than lies wrapped in pretty words. And in the shadows of her mind, she was already preparing to strike. The applause had barely faded when the heavy doors at the back opened. Heels clicked against marble. Heads turned. Sloane Mercer entered in a dress of deep red, her blonde hair flowing like she had stepped off a magazine cover. Her presence cut the air sharper than any blade. She walked straight down the aisle, ignoring the gasps, her eyes locked on Grayson. Her voice, high and shaking, broke the moment. "Grayson, you cannot marry her!" A wave of whispers swept across the guests. Faces shifted from joy to confusion, then to discomfort. Selina froze, her bouquet trembling in her grip. Grayson stepped forward, stunned, his jaw tight. Evelyn's lips curled into the faintest smile. This was the scene she had planned. Every second of it. Sloane stopped a few feet from the couple, her chest rising fast. "You belong with me. Not with her. She doesn't deserve you." The silence that followed was louder than any music. Guests looked back and forth between the women, waiting for someone to respond. And in that silence, Selina felt the first sting of betrayal from a world she had always known would doubt her place. Before Grayson could speak, Evelyn rose from her seat. Her pearls shimmered under the lights as she walked toward Sloane. She placed a gentle hand on the young woman's arm, her voice soft enough to sound kind, loud enough for all to hear. "It's all right, dear. Tell us what's on your heart." Gasps rippled again. Some guests leaned closer, eager for drama. Others shook their heads, uneasy but unwilling to interrupt. Sloane glanced at Evelyn, her eyes wide, then straightened her shoulders. With the mother of the groom behind her, she looked braver. Selina's heart sank. She could see the trap forming. Evelyn wasn't calming the storm. She was feeding it. The room buzzed with whispers. Strangers who had been clapping minutes ago now leaned together, murmuring doubts. Faces that once smiled at Selina now frowned, measuring her with suspicion. Grayson stood frozen, torn between stopping the chaos and respecting his mother. His silence pressed down heavier than words. Selina felt the weight of 200 eyes judging her, searching for cracks. She had always known Evelyn disliked her, but to see the crowd turn too, that pierced deeper than any insult. Evelyn lifted her hand, commanding silence. The whispers died down as if the room itself obeyed her. She looked directly at Selina. "This woman is no bride for my son. She is nothing but a cheap secretary, from a family of laborers. No degree, no class, no history worth mentioning. She came here for one reason: money." Gasps echoed across the hall. Some people covered their mouths. Others nodded slowly, already believing the words. Selina's chest tightened. Each sentence was a blade. She had worked her entire life to live honestly, even while hiding her family name. And here, in front of everyone, she was painted as worthless. Grayson's eyes darted between his mother and his bride. His lips parted, but no words came. The weight of his mother's judgment pressed against his loyalty to the woman he loved. Evelyn's voice sharpened, her words dripping with triumph. "She fooled you, Grayson. She fooled all of us, but I will not let her fool this family." The room erupted in whispers again. To many, Evelyn's reputation made her word truth, and in that moment, Selina felt her dignity stripped away before the world. The room waited for her to fight back, to shout, to deny every word. But Selina did not speak. She lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening around her bouquet. A tear slipped down her cheek, tracing the edge of her lips. Her silence spoke louder than any protest. Guests leaned in, some believing it was guilt. Others felt a pang in their chest, recognizing the pain of a woman cornered, with no one to defend her. Grayson reached for her hand, but his grip trembled. Even he was unsure. The silence pressed on him too, forcing him to question. Evelyn smirked. To her, the lack of words was confession. She turned slightly, as if to let the audience drink in the image. A bride broken, a son confused, a family disgraced. Selina finally lifted her eyes. For a brief second, her gaze burned with quiet fire. She would not scream. She would not beg. But she would not forget. 200 eyes remained on her, waiting, judging. And in the deepest corners of her heart, Selina promised herself the truth would come. Not today, not in this moment, but soon. Grayson gripped Selina's hand tighter, his voice low. "This is not true. You know I believe you." But the firmness in his words cracked as Evelyn's accusations echoed in his mind. He remembered the nights Selina avoided questions about her past, the times she changed the subject when money came up. At the time, he thought it was modesty. Now doubt whispered, was it something else? He looked at his mother. Evelyn's eyes were steady, cold, convinced. She had never lied to him before. She had guided him through business, through loss, through every stage of his life. Could she be wrong now? Selina's silence weighed on him. Why didn't she fight back? Why didn't she shout the truth? His chest tightened, torn between the woman he loved and the mother he had always trusted. Two forces pulled at him, tearing his heart in opposite directions. Guests watched him closely, waiting to see which side he would choose. His hesitation, his faltering eyes, said more than words. And in that hesitation, Selina felt the sharpest cut. It wasn't Evelyn's voice that broke her. It was the fear that even Grayson's love might not survive this storm. A rustle spread through the crowd. Dozens of guests raised their phones, the glow of screens lighting up the room. They recorded Selina's tears. They recorded Evelyn's sharp words. They recorded Grayson's hesitation. Within minutes, live streams went up on social media. Comments poured in from strangers who knew nothing but the 30-second clip of a bride being accused. Some laughed, some mocked, others judged. The cruelty of the digital world moved faster than compassion ever could. Selina felt the sting of 1,000 invisible eyes beyond the hall. She had lived in private for years, choosing silence over fame. Now, against her will, her pain was entertainment. She stood frozen, her dignity being consumed by likes, shares, and gossip. The estate that should have held memories of joy now held humiliation that could never be erased. Grayson tried to wave people down. "Stop filming!" His voice cracked, but no one listened. The hunger for spectacle was too strong. Selina clenched her jaw. She would not beg these people to stop. She would not give Evelyn that satisfaction. But inside, she knew this moment would follow her far beyond the Hamptons, staining her name before the truth had a chance to speak. Selina's hands trembled as she reached into her gown and pulled out her phone. The crowd leaned forward, curious. She pressed a number already waiting in her contacts. She lifted the phone to her ear, her voice steady though her heart pounded. "It's time." 2 simple words. Gasps spread across the hall. Some guests exchanged smirks. They whispered that she was calling a car, running away, leaving in shame. Evelyn crossed her arms, lips curving into victory. "Look at her," she said softly to those nearest. "Even now, she flees, just like the fraud she is." Grayson's chest rose and fell. He didn't know what the words meant. He only knew that Selina's calm was not the calm of defeat. It was something else. Selina slipped the phone back into her gown. She did not look at Evelyn, did not look at the guests. She simply stood tall, her gaze fixed on the horizon beyond the glass windows. The room buzzed with whispers, but Selina said nothing more. She had made her move. Now, all that was left was to wait for the world outside to answer. Minutes dragged like hours. The quartet stopped playing. The champagne fizz lost its sparkle. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, murmuring among themselves. Evelyn's voice cut the silence. "There, you see? She's gone, calling someone to take her away, like the coward she is. Laughter trickled from a few corners of the room. Others nodded, relieved to believe her. To them, the story was already finished. Selina lowered her bouquet. Her lips curved, not into a smile of surrender, but into something colder, a smile that held patience, not weakness. Her silence pressed heavier than Evelyn's words. Those closest to her felt it, though they could not name it. Grayson shifted beside her, torn between shame and unease. He looked at Selina, trying to read her calm. Was she broken, or was she hiding something? The air thickened, as if the estate itself waited for an answer, and then, faint at first, a sound touched the edge of hearing, a low, distant hum that grew stronger with each passing second. Selina lifted her eyes, still silent, still calm. Her secret was moving closer, and soon no one in that hall would laugh again. The hum grew into a roar. Guests turned their heads, frowning. Glasses rattled against tables. Dresses fluttered with the wind pushing in from outside. Then came the thunder of blades. Helicopters, their lights piercing through the twilight, circled above the estate. The sound shook the ground, rattled every heart. Children clung to their mothers. Men stood, shielding their eyes, staring upward. Phones lifted again, this time in awe, not mockery. Down the driveway, a line of black Cadillacs rolled in, followed by two gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantoms. Engines purred like predators. Evelyn's face drained of color. She turned to Selina, but Selina never moved. She stood tall, bouquet lowered, her expression unreadable. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who could command such an entrance? Who had the power to summon the sky and the road all at once? Grayson's heart pounded. He looked at Selina and saw the glint in her eyes. She had not called for escape. She had called for revelation. The storm had arrived not to destroy her, but to tear apart every lie spoken in that hall. And, for the first time, Evelyn Hale felt fear. The car doors opened. From the first escalade stepped a woman with silver-streaked hair, her presence commanding even before she spoke. Octavia Vaughn. 60 years old, dressed in a tailored navy suit, every step sharp, every glance filled with authority. The crowd parted without being asked. No one could look away. She moved with the weight of someone who owned more than land, more than money. She owned respect. Selina's lips trembled, then steadied. She whispered one word that carried across the silence. "Mother." Gasps filled the hall. Heads turned. Whispers collided in disbelief. A mother no one had expected, a truth no one had imagined. Evelyn's eyes widened, her control slipping for the first time that night. She searched Selina's face, then Octavia's, trying to connect what seemed impossible. Octavia's gaze settled on Evelyn, calm, unflinching. "You have spoken enough," she said, her voice deep, firm, and final. Selina felt warmth rise in her chest. For the first time, she was no longer alone, and the guests, who had moments ago judged her as nothing, now stared at the woman beside her, sensing that the story they thought they knew had only just begun. Another car door opened. A young man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit cut perfectly to his frame. His face carried sharp lines, familiar to anyone who had seen Grayson as a younger man. Murmurs rippled instantly. He looked too much like the Hale family to be coincidence. Octavia placed a hand on his shoulder and guided him forward. Her voice carried, calm but heavy. "This is Dorian Vaughn Hale, the son you abandoned, the child you denied." The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, scattered voices filled the air. Some guests stood in disbelief. Others pulled out their phones again, desperate to capture the chaos. Grayson's jaw fell open. His reflection stood before him, another son of Evelyn. The resemblance cut deeper than words. Evelyn staggered back, clutching her pearls. "No, this cannot be true." Her voice cracked. Dorian's eyes narrowed. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked only at her. 28 years ago, you chose your reputation over me. You paid my mother to disappear, but secrets never stay buried. Every face turned to Evelyn, and, for the first time, the perfect image she had built began to fracture. Evelyn shook her head, her voice desperate. "You lie! This is madness!" But Octavia stepped forward, her tone sharp as steel. 28 years ago, you gave me money. You begged me to vanish, to protect your perfect image. You thought the world would never learn. But here he stands, your son, your blood. The crowd gasped again. Even those who had doubted Selina minutes ago could not deny the resemblance. The truth was written across Dorian's face. Evelyn's hands trembled. The control she wielded all her life slipped through her fingers. Guests who once admired her now whispered in disgust. Grayson stared at his mother. His chest rose in heavy breaths, each one filled with betrayal. "Is it true?" His voice cut through the noise. Evelyn faltered, her silence louder than any denial. Octavia raised her chin. "You called my daughter a gold digger, but you are the one who buried your own child for gold, for status, for the illusion of power." The weight of the accusation hung heavy. Evelyn's face paled. Her empire of reputation crumbled in front of the very society she tried to impress. Octavia stepped closer, placing herself firmly between Selina and Evelyn. Her voice was steady, every word carved with power. "The woman you mocked, the bride you shamed, the one you called a fraud, she is the rightful owner of this estate. Every brick, every acre, every glass of wine poured tonight belongs to her." The crowd gasped in unison. Selina's quiet smile returned, not of arrogance but of truth finally revealed. Evelyn's lips parted, trembling, but no sound came. Selina straightened her shoulders. For hours she had endured whispers, accusations, shame. Now, with her mother beside her, the balance shifted. She was no longer the accused. She was the heir. Octavia's words cut deeper. "You tried to reduce her to nothing, but she is more than your family will ever be. She has more wealth, more legacy, and more dignity in one breath than you have shown in your lifetime." The guests fell silent, their judgment turning into awe. Selina stood tall, shielded by the woman who had once hidden her, now revealed as her greatest protector. For Evelyn, it was the beginning of the end. For Selina, it was the moment of vindication. The hall fell into silence. The buzzing whispers that once condemned Selina were gone, replaced by heavy breaths and bowed heads. No one laughed. No one sneered. Faces that had been sharp with suspicion softened with shame. Guests who had eagerly raised their phones lowered them now. Some hid their screens, as if guilty for turning another woman's pain into entertainment. Others stared at Selina with eyes that carried apology, though no words were spoken. Selina felt the shift. Minutes ago, she was judged as an outsider. Now, every eye looked at her with awe, mixed with regret. Grayson swallowed hard, his gaze moving between his mother and his bride. The world he thought he knew had shattered. Evelyn stood stiff, her face drained, as if the foundation of her life had been ripped away. For the first time she had no words, no defense, no power. The crowd's silence was not empty. It was heavy, filled with realization. They had believed the wrong woman. They had turned against the wrong heart. Selina's pain had become proof that truth, even hidden, would always rise. And in that silence, Evelyn Hale's empire of control quietly collapsed. Grayson stood frozen, his chest tight, his breath unsteady. The truth pressed against him like a storm. Selina was not the simple woman he believed her to be. She was the heir to a fortune beyond his imagination. She had hidden it. Every day, every year they were together. He felt the ground beneath him shift. Love that once felt solid now trembled. Doubt rose in his mind. Did she ever trust him? Or was their marriage built on silence? He looked at her, searching for an answer in her tear-streaked face. His heart still ached for her, but the crack of betrayal cut deeper. Guests watched him, whispering. His hesitation betrayed him. To them, it looked like a man questioning his bride, a man no longer sure. Grayson wanted to speak, to defend her, but words caught in his throat. He could not reconcile the woman he loved with the secret now revealed. Selina reached toward him, but he pulled back, just enough for her to feel the distance. The love that had once been their shield now stood at risk of breaking, and Grayson feared that once broken, it might never be whole again. Selina's knees weakened, her voice breaking. Tears ran freely as she whispered, "I never wanted this. I only wanted you to love me for who I am, not for the money, not for the name." Her words cracked through the silence, piercing hearts around the room. Women in the crowd pressed hands to their chests, feeling her pain as their own. She looked at Grayson, pleading. "If you had known the truth, would you have seen me? Or only the fortune behind me? I was afraid that I would lose the only real love I've ever had." Grayson's jaw tightened. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to erase the doubt. But the silence of her secret still stung. Selina dropped her bouquet, her voice trembling. I lied by omission, yes, but every smile, every touch, every night we shared, none of that was false. All of that was love. Her tears were not weakness, but confession. The kind that could only come from someone stripped bare before the world. The crowd shifted, moved by the rawness of her words. For a moment, her shame turned into shared sorrow, and hearts began to ache with her. Evelyn snapped. Her voice tore through the hall like broken glass. Lies! All of it! She deceived you for 3 years, Grayson. 3 years of manipulation. Don't fall for her tears. Her hands shook as she pointed at Selina, her fury almost desperate. The elegance she wore like armor cracked, revealing fear beneath. Some guests flinched at her tone, others frowned. The tide had shifted, and her rage only exposed her weakness. Grayson lowered his gaze, conflicted, but the crowd no longer hung on his silence. They watched Evelyn instead, seeing her desperation spill out. Octavia stepped forward, her eyes steady. She did not need to shout. Her presence alone reminded the room who held true power. Selina stood still, tears falling, but no longer alone. Evelyn's voice rose again, shrill, uncontrolled. She played all of you. She played this entire family, and you will regret it if you believe her. But the more she screamed, the clearer it became. This was not the voice of justice. It was the cry of a woman losing control. The guests who once admired her now turned their heads. Respect drained away, leaving only pity. Dorian stepped forward, his eyes locked on Evelyn. His voice was calm but heavy. The woman you call mother is the same woman who paid mine to vanish. She chose her image over me. The room stilled again. Every word was a blade of truth. Evelyn's lips parted, but she found no answer. Dorian's hands trembled, but his voice stayed strong. I grew up wondering why I wasn't good enough to be kept. I lived with the silence of your choice. Do you know what it does to a child? To be discarded like trash? Gasps spread among the guests. A few wiped their eyes. The pain in his words pierced deeper than wealth or scandal. He stepped closer, his gaze sharp. You call Selina unworthy, but what about me? What about the son you buried in secrecy? Do I not deserve life? Do I not deserve to be acknowledged? Evelyn's face collapsed into shock, her mask shattered. Dorian's final words echoed. You may have erased me from your world, but tonight I erase the image you built from lies. And in that moment, Evelyn Hale was not the accuser. She was the accused. Octavia stepped forward, her calm cutting through the tension. She raised her voice, steady and deliberate. For years, Evelyn, you have played queen of this circle, but let me remind you, every gala, every hospital wing, every charity dinner you brag about was built with my money. Gasps filled the hall once more. She turned to the guests. Your scholarships, your events, your foundations, I have funded them quietly, with no credit asked. Evelyn took the applause, she took the bows, but it was never her wealth, it was mine. Faces turned, realization dawning. The society Evelyn had used for status was not hers at all. Octavia's tone sharpened. If I wished, I could cut every stream of support tonight, and you know I could. But I will not punish you for her pride. I only ask you to see truth. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn's cheeks burned red, her power crumbling in public view. Selina stood taller beside her mother, no longer the outsider. The truth of her bloodline, her dignity, and her worth now shone brighter than Evelyn's entire facade. The guests lowered their heads, ashamed of how easily they had followed lies. Sloane stood frozen under the weight of Octavia's words. The guests' eyes turned on her, piercing through the polished image she had tried to wear. Her lip trembled, her shoulders slumped. The pressure broke her. Tears streaked her mascara as she blurted out, I was paid to ruin this wedding. Evelyn gave me the money. She told me to come, to speak, to destroy Selina. Gasps tore through the crowd. Shock rolled like thunder. Evelyn's face twisted, but no denial could silence Sloane's sobs. She sank to her knees, clutching her head. I thought I needed the money. I thought it would fix everything, but now I see. I destroyed myself. Some guests shook their heads in anger. Others pitied her collapse. She had been greedy, but also desperate. Selina watched quietly, her pain softened with sympathy. Sloane had been a weapon, but also a victim of Evelyn's pride. Still, the truth was out. And in that moment, Sloane's downfall became Evelyn's final betrayal laid bare for all to see. Grayson's voice cut through the silence, raw with anger. 3 years, Selina. 3 years, and you never trusted me enough to tell me the truth? His words echoed in the hall. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable with the wound laid open before them. Selina's tears flowed again, heavier now. She tried to reach for him, but he stepped back, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark with hurt. I stood by you when everyone doubted, he said, his voice cracking. I defended you. I believed in you, but you hid everything. Do you know what that does to love? The guests felt the fracture. It was not Evelyn's lies that hurt the most now, it was the crack between husband and wife. Selina's sobs filled the silence. Women in the crowd touched their hearts, feeling the weight of betrayal alongside her. Grayson turned his face away, as if unable to bear the sight of her pain. Yet his hands trembled, betraying the battle still raging inside. The love that had begun with vows of forever now teetered on the edge of collapse, and the room held its breath, fearing the final break. Selina fell to her knees, her voice shaking but clear. Please, Grayson, just give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes and you will understand everything. The hall grew still again. Her words carried desperation, but also determination. She looked up at him, her gown pulled around her, her eyes burning with honesty. I kept the truth because I wanted to be seen for me. Not my money, not my name, only me. But if 20 minutes is all I have left, let me show you. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some believed her, others doubted, but everyone felt the weight of her plea. Grayson's hands balled into fists. He wanted to say no, to walk away, to protect his heart, yet the sight of her broken on the floor carved into him. He gave a slow nod, his voice tight. 20 minutes. Selina exhaled, relief flooding her. Her chance had not vanished. The truth still had time. The guests leaned forward, drawn into the countdown. Every second now felt heavier, charged with anticipation, and in Selina's heart she prayed that the truth would heal more than it hurt. Octavia stepped forward, her voice calm, carrying across the hall. It is time you know who Selina truly is. She revealed the truth piece by piece. The Vaughn global empire, the oil fields in Texas, the towers in New York, the charitable foundations built quietly in Selina's name. Gasps filled the room with every revelation. Guests who had doubted her now stared wide-eyed, realizing the woman they mocked owned more power than they could imagine. Selina stood, her tears drying, her chin high. She no longer looked like a bride crushed by shame. She looked like the heiress she had always been, cloaked not in arrogance but in quiet strength. Octavia's words struck final. Selina Vaughn chose to live simply, to love without wealth. She sacrificed reputation for the chance at something real, and tonight she has been judged unfairly for it. The hall erupted, not with whispers, but with silence thick with awe. Selina's truth was no longer hidden. The lies had collapsed. The dignity she had protected shone at last, and the story that began with humiliation now turned into triumph. The hall had fallen silent. Selina stood in the center, her gown heavy with tears, but her spirit unbroken. The truth was no longer hidden. She was not the outsider they mocked. She was the heir they never imagined. Grayson looked at her with eyes full of conflict. He saw the woman who had loved him quietly, the heiress who had hidden her name, and the sacrifice she had made to protect their love. Hurt lingered, but so did devotion. The bond between them bent, yet it had not shattered. Evelyn sat pale, her lies crumbling, her power stripped away. Sloane wept softly at the edge of the hall, consumed by her own choices. And the guests who had once sneered now lowered their eyes, ashamed of how easily they had judged. Selina's voice carried through the silence. A woman can lose her reputation. She can be misunderstood. She can be betrayed. But her strength will always come from the hope of being truly loved. Tears glistened in the crowd. The story of humiliation had become a story of survival, of dignity, of love. If you believe love can rise above judgment, share this story and subscribe so you never miss the next journey of the heart.